Thank you for doing that.
Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Honorable Mayor Ron Shaver,
Here.
Councilmember Dan Marlar,
Here.
Christine Casto,
Here.
Allison Howe,
Here.
Clint Anderson,
Here.
Lisa Northrup,
Here.
Kevin Lindell.
Here. First on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the April 18th, 2017 council meeting. Mr. Brennan?
Thank you, Your Honor. A draft copy of those minutes are in your packets and are presented for your approval by resolution.
Has everyone had a chance to review, and are there any corrections or questions, comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution accepting the minutes from the April 18th, 2017 regular city council meeting.
Second.
I have a resolution by Christine Casto, a second by Allison Howell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Next, we have a reading of a proclamation declaring May 14th through the 20th as National Police Week and May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day. To recognize National Police Week 2017 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and the members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the police department of Fort Morgan has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which increasingly provides a vital public service, now therefore I, Mayor Ronald Shaver, call upon all citizens of the city of Fort Morgan and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 14th through the 20th as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an invariable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. I further call upon all citizens of Fort Morgan to observe May 15, 2017 as National Peace Officer Memorial Day to honor all those peace officers who through their courageous deeds have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of duty. Flags of the United States will be flown at half-staff on all government buildings on May 15th. Therefore, be it resolved that by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Fort Morgan, I formally declare May 14th through the 20th, 2017 as Police Week in the city of Fort Morgan, and publicly salute the service of our law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Fort Morgan to be affixed. On this day, May 2nd, 2017.
Around here.
Thank you for your service, and thank all the gentlemen that work in our police department.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You have a never-ending and thankless job at times, but you guys do it with pride and integrity, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a presentation on possible action on a proposal for branding the Warner Street property. Mr. Miller.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packets is a memo detailing what we are referring to as Center Point Plaza. I take ownership for the name now, but Ms. Gondek, before she left us, had come up with the concept to begin branding the 100-acre parcel of land that the city recently acquired next to the police station. Engineering of infrastructure, coordination with CDOT, and marketing the available land has begun. And in an effort to better market the property, we recommend attaching a name to the large parcel that will stay with it as it's developed. There's some pictures in your packet highlighting examples where this has occurred elsewhere in the state, i.e. Prairie Center, Center Place, which is the Greeley facility, or mixed-use development, and then Centara is one of the larger ones on the Front Range. So I wanted to come to you tonight to make sure you agreed with our approach as we move forward with marketing that land, and upon approval, we'll prepare to get some signage put up and highlight how interested parties can reach me for purchasing land moving forward. But as I referenced in the memo, whether it's the loft sat or the shop sat or promenade at, there'll always be a tie back to Center Point.
So is the
Plaza.
spelling correct?
That is how it was proposed, and how I have proceeded, and it is Center Point, not Centre Pointe,
Really? You took
as has
ours.
been highlighted by some. But millennials, they have great ideas.
They do have great ideas.
And spelling issues. Sorry, just kidding.
Yeah.
Spell check.
Millennials, just kidding.
We don't have spell check.
I see that.
Oh, okay.
If you text it, that's how it would.
Classy.
Anybody have any comments or questions of
Excited.
Mr. Miller?
I think branding is a great idea. Thanks for all your hard work on this development and moving forward with attracting potential developers. I'm not in love with the name, but it's not my baby. It's kind of your baby. So someone that I might live with said that it sounded like a mega church name. But yeah, it's totally, like, I don't care either way. If it's an attractive name, if the logo is super clean and looks great. Yeah. So I don't want to drag in my personal feelings about the spelling,
Christine?
if we love it.
And we're just giving you a hard time about the spelling
enough.
because we can.
It's just a good thing that Josh's wife didn't, that she's the one that named their kids. No, actually, I think it's great. The whole thing is really good, and we really need that to move forward, so.
And I think it's great. I think the sooner we can, even if it's just some basic, branding and some signage up on the property to, start getting people excited, and we're moving in the right direction.
And I think the name specifically Center Point, the plaza piece, might be tied to something in the future, but the land for platting purposes will be referred to as Center Point.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's necessary, but I personally am not very fond of Center Point, but I don't have any better options, so.
Were there any other names tossed around, or is this just like Chelsea Gondek parting?
Not specifically. We kept going back to the promenade at, crossings at. The crossings kept coming up with the railroad tie and railroad history, but it's the after the at part that has to be decided. And as we just did some Google searches, throughout mixed-use development, Center Point comes up quite a bit. Or like Greeley is the example, Center Place is the target center off 34 in Greeley. So we just kind of, went with what stuck at the time.
Well, and I think we've done a lot of, Christmas Capital of the Plains, and, like when we do that down in Brush, we call it the heart of Morgan County for Fort Morgan. I think, it just further propagates Jeff's philosophy that we are the center of the universe. And so.
This is true.
We are the center point.
Perfect name. We're the
So.
center of the universe, and that name fits well.
So yeah, it could be the shops at the center of the universe. That could be the center of the
That's a
universe.
little long.
Okay.
And we might have some surprises as this goes, but there's nobody really knocking on the door, interested in 30 acres at this point. So for some of the professional center at Centerpoint Plaza or whatever we come up, might come back to you with some of those details depending on how parcels are sold. The hope is we get some interested developers that are interested in larger parcels of land or a retail development as a whole, and excuse me, they'd be, obviously have the ability to come up with the name of their choice, but again, tie it back to Centerpoint, just so there's that simple reference that we're all aware of.
I'm sure the people in Loveland, when they brought Centerra to them, and they're going, what is that? So, yeah.
I like the name, Josh. I think it's a good idea, and I think it will be the first step to successful.
Appreciate it.
So is Plaza going to be part of it also, or just Centerpoint?
I think the land as a whole will be plotted as Centerpoint, but depending on how that roundabout and initial area is developed, there'll probably be the Plaza reference. But again, whether it's retail specific, commercial, professional space, I think whoever's bringing the investment to town, we let them decide what makes sense for them. But again, the tie back to Centerpoint.
Well, I like the marketing brand of it. I think that is a key point.
Yeah, and
for your
images
economic
wise, that's why I included that. That's really what we're after. Nothing fancy. I mean, stake all four corners with the sign to reference it as, Centerpoint Plaza, and what it becomes from there. We'll always tie back to Centerpoint, but give it the Centerpoint Plaza name for now as it is promoted and marketed in the logo, and then attached to the underneath part of that sign will be my contact information to reach my office for purposes of purchasing land from the city. As
So
the
you
land's
are-
sold, we'll drop that off and leave the logos and signage as such.
So have you already come up or designed a logo? Or?
I haven't got that far, but we'll put something together that ties back to Centerpoint and the city, and keep it simple enough for production's sake that it's clean, and
Something like a bullseye? Or,
yeah, maybe.
Fort Morgan's logo in the middle.
Or a
you
quail.
know. Well, I like the
they have
concept
an eagle.
of it. So I think it helps you with your marketing of the property. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a stupid idea. Oh, no.
We love you, Josh.
Tough crowd tonight.
I could hire a consultant and pay a lot of money to have him give us a name.
You only got 20
6
bucks
months
for
from now,
signage,
but-
though.
Yeah.
Josh, it's a hard job,
Yeah.
I have to say. I appreciate you trying to keep things on
Yeah.
focus.
Track.
On track, yeah.
I don't know if I need I don't know what I'm asking for.
You're
to be
asking for a
quite honest.
resolution.
Asking for a resolution to
Resolution.
approve the...
A resolution to approve the naming.
So if there are no other
The land.
questions or comments for or about Mr. Miller, I would entertain a resolution for or against his Centre Pointe.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution renaming and rebranding the Warner property as Centerpoint Plaza as part of the plat process, and giving them the ability to promote the land available for development.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup, a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
It's all in gist.
Now we have to stop picking on him, right?
No,
Okay.
No,
no.
He's big, he can handle it.
and don't pick on him too much. He is bigger than most of us here.
You don't scare me.
Next on our agenda is a public hearing on an ordinance annexing the city of Fort annexing to the city of Fort Morgan the area known as the Legion Field annexation. This is a public hearing. Please keep public comments to the issues before the council. Each speaker is asked to limit comment time to 3 minutes unless the speaker represents a group of citizens, in which event additional time may be allocated. Please respect these limits. I reserve the right to limit public comment that is inappropriate under these guidelines or otherwise improper. I also reserve the right to limit testimony or questioning that is repetitive, cumulative, argumentative, or not pertinent to the issues, and to set a time limit for the duration of testimony if I determine it is necessary in light of the number of persons who have signed to testify. Legal notice, Mr. Brennan.
The legal notice of this public hearing was published 4 consecutive weeks in the Fort Morgan Times on March 27th and April 3rd, 10th, and 17th.
Next is presentation of the ordinance by Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. In your packet, you have the full ordinance, and I won't necessarily read the entire thing for you. In fact, I'll read very little of it because I'm sure you all read it. What it does essentially is it goes through the legal requirements for annexation, which is very strict under statutory guidelines. And Jason has done a really good job in making sure that we meet those guidelines in the preparation of the ordinance. What the ordinance sets out is that certain property that currently is not within the territorial jurisdiction of the city will be brought in and made part of the city, which provides us with the police powers and other powers necessary to regulate land use, behavior, other things that may go on out there that needs police power. If you look, I think this is, if you look over, it's not bright enough. Oh, there it is. Stop moving it fast. If you look at the map up on the screen, essentially what we'll be taking in is what you find outlined in the dark. This area is already in the city. The field alone is in the city. Doesn't make a lot of sense because it was probably done long before contiguity requirements. You can't necessarily annex a piece in the middle of nothing. You can't now, so everything has to be touching. This little piece right here outlines the county's property. That's where you see the Emergency Operations Center for the county. And we're working with the county right now to make sure we meet their concerns that were raised when we brought the petition to council. If you recall, Commissioner Zwetzig was here and talked about their concerns about the zoning, which we'll talk about next, and making sure that whatever they need to build on that property is not restricted or prohibited in the future. So in adopting and passing the ordinance that's in the packet tonight, essentially you'll be taking this piece of property that's shown up there and making it part of the city limits. Currently, there are, I guess we are bringing in the football, is the football field. Did I miss anything, Jason?
Yeah, the football stadium will be coming in
Oh,
as
it will
the
be,
school
yeah.
district's parcel. This is the zoning map. So what it doesn't show is the canal right-of-way that continues up to the left, all the way up to the BNSF right-of-way, all the way down
it's
to
all of
where it
this.
continues. Parts of the BNSF right-of-way are currently in the city, parts of it are not. So this would clean up some of those issues. It's not property that's a platted legal lot, so as far as property owners are concerned, the ditch company and the railroad, BNSF, didn't want to participate in the process. They just kind of take a neutral stance because they don't really care whether it's in or out of the city, so that's why they're not considered property owners in the process. But the right-of-way that extends all the way past Dual Street, it basically makes the entire railroad right-of-way and portions of that ditch to be within the city as well. But the main focus, the part that'll affect most people, is the Legion Field Stadium, the county's Emergency Operations Center, and then all of the baseball, the Legion Field out, the rest of it, the Dual Street Field, et cetera.
Questions at this point?
One of the things, yeah, if you have any questions while we go through this, please
The
interrupt.
little triangle that's to the right of the right-of-way from the canal? Nope, up at the top. There's, yeah, right
Yes.
there. Is that already annexed in?
This part is.
Part of it's are and part of it's are not. So when you see the top portion, I believe belongs to the city already of those 3 lots,
Right.
and the lower 2 or 3 little sections are not currently annexed. Parts of it are, parts of it aren't.
Is that like the parking lot for the baseball field?
Yes.
That- that's
Matt
what-
Underwood's house,
Yeah,
and
and
the
the
parking
parking
lot,
lot.
and the gas, there's a gas
Okay.
station.
So the
for
city,
city's
the
gas.
city owns part of that where the gas sits, so that's already annexed.
But in reference to, we talked about
Contiguity.
that word, thank you. So aren't we annexing all the way around the property and leaving some of it unannexed?
Contiguity requirements are that at least 1/6 of the property line to be annexed has to be touching the city limits already. So we have that contiguity with the BNSF right-of-way all along the city, with the southern property that was previously annexed, which belongs to the school district. So that's the contiguity requirements, the Pioneer subdivision, which operates as a trailer home park. So those are the contiguity requirements that we're required to meet as far as the enclaves that are being created or, I guess, continued by this. That's not a legal requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
And that does give the opportunity for a different kind of annexation, which is enclave annexation. When the city jurisdictional boundaries completely surround a property, there's a process that the council can go through to annex that property in. Otherwise, it has to come in through petition by the property owners. And that's what we're doing today.
So that little triangle that Lisa was talking about, are we annexing in all of those properties as well?
No, not at this point. What's coming
So there's
in?
going to be a little pocket of people.
There's a pocket all the way up
And there's
now
pockets,
along West
there's
Street there.
pockets right here, and there's a few pockets right here.
I know right in the middle of the Indian Streets neighborhood, there's like
Yep.
4 houses in there. I
Yep.
guess,
Or not,
just wondering why not.
because that's not part of the petition that was brought forward for this annexation agreement.
What this does is it puts us in a position that down the road, if we want to do enclave annexations, we surround them and we can go that direction. And there's some benefit to that. Obviously, some of the places that probably should be annexed into the city, we don't have that enclave situation, but you also take all the responsibilities of providing the services to those properties. So one of the things that we do in analyzing an annexation is whether we have adequate services available for that new territory.
But that's a topic for a different day, correct?
That would be a topic for another day as far as enclave annexation, but with any annexation, we have to determine whether or not we have adequate resources to serve them.
And in this case, as mentioned previously, all of the landowners are a part of the application. In an instance where you have landowners that are not a part of the petition, then that issue goes to potential vote of those landowners. So it's a lot easier and cleaner in the process if people want to be annexed than trying to get a whole neighborhood and have a vote for those property owners, et cetera. So.
Okay, so the, in the packet, the diagram, it's color-coded, as well as those that receive notification. Are those then, because those are listing the BNSF properties, also some of that ditch property, but we're indicating only what's outlined in here, so it's a little bit different. Is that other stuff, is that part of the next public hearing?
This is
zoning.
actually,
Okay.
I was mistaken, this is part of the next public hearing, because if you see it's the zoning map, the annexation map is actually, you can see it kind of outlined here with the hash marks.
Okay.
That goes like this, and then it comes around, and then what we're actually zoning is this right here.
So to answer your question, though, those properties that got notice that this was happening is a requirement by state statute that we notice any property within 300 feet, so that those owners have an opportunity, whether they're being annexed or not, to come in and voice their concerns or their compliments, I guess, to the
Right.
process.
So my confusion was at what we were talking about now. I guess I didn't realize that they were separate issues.
Yes.
That the zoning actually does include that stretch, not the zoning, the annexation includes that stretch of the railroad that's not outlined on the map.
Correct.
But the zoning, which we will do next, includes only the field.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's because we don't zone right-of-ways, because you can't build in them. So there's no use to that.
Okay.
So if you approve, Jason, one other question I had was, did we get the final, I don't know if the county sent over that final letter.
Exempting us out of
Yeah.
it, not to my knowledge, but it wouldn't have come to my office.
Yeah. So that's, like I said, we're working with the county on the final touch-ups with everything. I know that Jason's been corresponding with them on their concerns about the Emergency Operations Center right there, and we'll make sure that all that's put into place. Upon approval of the ordinance tonight, if that's what you're so inclined to do, we would be taking in, again, this territory outlined with the hash marks along the railroad right-of-way and then back, and this area here that will be zoned next. Any other questions?
So anything that is built on the railroad right-of-ways will be grandfathered?
Yes. So if it's already in there, it's grandfathered. But what it does give us is a little more leeway to help the railroad keep some of that area cleaned up. So. That's all I have on the ordinance.
Okay. Next, we'll hear public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on the issue? Seeing none, if there is no one else that wishes to speak on this issue, I'll ask the city clerk if there were any oral or written comments were submitted to the clerk's office prior to this hearing.
Not through my office, Your Honor, but several emails and documentation and phone calls were included in your packet that came through the Planning and Zoning Office, and they were referenced in the memo as well.
I believe they're included in our packets also.
And, Your Honor, if I could interject, some of the comments that were brought up at the Planning Commission hearing, ultimately, Planning Commission did recommend to City Council to approve the annexation. Present at Planning Commission were a couple of the property owners directly to the northwest of the city property. They wanted to ensure that this wouldn't be changing or affecting any of their properties. So at this point, because they're not included in the area to be annexed, they weren't affected. So I see them here tonight. I just wanted to make sure that their concerns were on the record as well.
We'll now proceed to their council discussion. Are there any questions from council or any discussion on this matter? Just for clarity, this is the public hearing on annexation of the property only, and the next one will be
Correct.
zoning it. There's no further discussion, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Your Honor, I would offer a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion by Christine Costello and a second by Allison Howe. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council action, Mr. Myers.
All right, council has the option to approve or disapprove of the ordinance on first reading. The legal factors that are required for council to consider were set forth in the annexation memo. Most, if not all of those were reviewed by staff previously at the petition phase to ensure that this property would comply with state law.
Okay. I would entertain a resolution approving a first reading of annexing Legion Field.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution approving first reading of an ordinance 1191, annexing the Legion Field property and surrounding areas to the city of Fort Morgan.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on an ordinance establishing the zoning district in and upon lands annexed into the city of Fort Morgan, and for said purpose revising and supplementing the zoning district map of the said city for the American Legion annexation. This is a public hearing, and the same rules apply as were previously stated in the previous hearing. First is the issue of legal notice. Mr. Brennan, has it been properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, a legal notice of this public hearing also appeared in the Fort Morgan Times on March 27th and April 3rd, 10th, and 17th.
Next is a presentation for this ordinance by Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. This should be fairly quick. We have three parcels that need to be zoned, and so you've got the circle in the middle, and you've got the county property, and then you have the city's property outlined here. What we're proposing for zoning in this property is two different kinds of zoning. For school district property in the middle and the city's property, it would be transitional, or T. That has specific uses that would be amenable for the future uses on that property as allowed in the code. In order to accommodate some of the requests and concerns by the county, the recommendation of the Planning Commission was to zone the county's property B1, which is mixed-use business. It has different allowances in that would allow them, for example, to put in a structure as high as 60 feet by right. Has various other rights associated with it that we believe would give them what they had asked for to make sure that they could develop that as much as they possibly would need to in the future. The property's pretty limited as far as size and what can be built on it, just because of its geographical location and size, but we believe that this zoning is a pretty good balance and sets up a situation where the county will get what they want. And Jason, I know you've been working on that a little bit more.
Just to add, the properties that are south of the ditch there that are not currently annexed and are not affected, but part of the reason to go with B1 and the recommendation was because there's a fitness center and a church just south of this. So in the future, whether that's 5, 10, 20, 30 years, however many years down the road, when that additional property comes into the city, this B1 use would be similar to what's already right there across the ditch. So it's not out of place. One of the other considerations you look at in these decisions is whether this fits with the comprehensive plan. Staff feels that it does, and that would be our recommendation.
Okay.
So, are there any questions about the ordinance and what it does?
The cities and the school districts transitional, and B1 for the small portion where the emergency management shack is for county. Is it basically the height, or is it they just want to stake?
Mostly it's a height. I think what their concern was a tower in the future if they had to put up a new communications tower. One of the issues that they deal with over there that we all deal with in older buildings, public buildings, is ADA accessibility. And because it's a public building, any modifications over there are going to require significant renovations to meet that requirement. So I'm not sure how much they're going to actually want to do over there. I know they have a working group together now looking at potentially another or a new emergency operations center, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. So this thing may just fix itself over time, but this gives them that allowance down the road to be able to do that.
And also, so council's aware, both or all three of these uses, because they're governmental entity, whether it's the school district, the city, or the county, all three of these uses as governmental uses can happen in any zoning classification. So the government use of property is a lot more flexible for government operations. The only difference being the setbacks and the height requirements, and B1 provided the most flexibility to the county as far as how far the property or building has to be from the right-of-way, how far it has to be from lot lines, et cetera. So that's why we were recommending B1, because it gives the most flexibility. The uses would be the same regardless of what zone they were in, but the size, shape, height of the building is most flexible under B1.
Next, we'll hear public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I would ask the city clerk if there were any oral or written comments that were submitted to the clerk's office prior to this hearing.
Not through my office, Your Honor.
We'll now proceed to council discussion. Are there any questions from the council or any discussion of council on the zoning?
For clarification, with the resolution, it doesn't have to specifically state the transitional and B1? Okay.
No, you can just pass the resolution as presented.
Okay.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close or continue the public hearing.
Your Honor, I would offer a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion by Christine Caston, a second by Dan Marlar. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council action, Mr. Myers.
All right, council has the option to approve the ordinance on first reading by resolution or to not pass the resolution. The criteria to consider is whether or not this fits in with the comprehensive plan and the surrounding area and how that all those uses work together or don't work together. Those are the criteria to consider.
I would entertain a resolution for or against.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution approving on first reading ordinance number 1192, an ordinance establishing a zoning district in and upon lands annexed to the city of Fort Morgan, and for said purposes, revising and supplementing the zoning district map for said city for the American Legion annexation.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Dan Marlar. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Next, we have discussion and direction on city participation in a pump station project for the pipeline supplying CBT water to the city. Mr. Nation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess I'm the lucky one that gets to come and talk to you about some money items tonight. So, as I think everybody's aware, as our water gets delivered to us through the pipeline with all the rest of participants, we find ourselves being basically the end of this very long straw that's come, a long ways to get us our water. When they built the pipeline, Northern Water contemplated the possibility of participants reaching capacity issues and everything like that. And they had enough forethought to go ahead and make sure that the current construction would allow for the expansion of that capacity. And so as I explained in my memo, right now we receive all the water through this pipeline just by gravity. So it's just the fact that Carter Lake is hundreds of feet higher than the city of Fort Morgan. It'll just naturally flow down to us. What we're starting to experience, and I think it's a good problem to have, it has a price tag with it, but it's a good problem to have, is that we're starting to run into situations in the peak of the summer when we have a lot of water demand where that pipeline is basically being maxed out as it gets to us. And last summer, Al O'Connor brought it to my attention that we actually we had 4 days during the month of July that we actually used full capacity of the pipeline using our capacity and also the capacity that we share with Morgan County Quality Water District. And so we were at a point over 4 days where we could physically not deliver any more water to the city of Fort Morgan. Now, before we all panic and it ends up on the front page of the newspaper, our ability to store water, treat larger amounts of water, store it in the tanks, allows us to perform these operational considerations and make sure that we're delivering water to the residents and the businesses at the rates they need it. And so we have flexibility for these things when they come up. But it does force the plant to operate differently than it did when it was first constructed. Just as an example, back in 2012, if you look at July and August are usually our hottest 2 months during the summer. That's when we're having our peak flows. Back in July of 2012, we didn't have a single day in the month of July that we needed to borrow Quality Water's capacity for the treatment of water. We did have 3 days that we maxed out our capacity, but that was it. July of last year, we had 7 days that we exceeded our capacity, and then we had those 4 days that we basically maxed out. And so this is getting to be a trend. It's a positive trend. Like I say, it's showing growth in our system. We've had, I think, more commercial growth or industrial growth over the last couple of years. And so we're at this point to where even Northern Water has recognized the fact that we need to have a conversation about where the capacity in the pipeline is going to be heading in the future. And so Northern Water called a meeting of the participants that are connected to the very eastern portion of the pipeline. And those are obviously us and Quality Water, the town of Hudson, town of Fort Lupton, and Tri-State Generation. And Tri-State Generation has a power plant down by Hudson that they are getting ready to switch over to basically all CBT water. And they're getting off of the well water that they're using, and so they are now becoming a large player in the end of the pipeline. And so we all sat down and had an initial meeting that was called by Northern Water, and they started the discussion because they wanted everybody to be aware that we were starting to see some of these capacity issues. The way the pipeline agreements are written and the way they were all signed is that if there's any one participant that feels excess capacity is needed, any one participant can basically trip the construction of these booster stations that they designed in the system. We had this initial meeting. I appreciated some of the candor from the other participants. The gentleman from Fort Lupton basically just said, I was sitting here 5 years ago, and I think it was Gary Dreesen that was sitting here, and basically just said, well, Fort Morgan's steering this bus, so whenever Fort Morgan says they need the water, we're going to have to start looking at delivering the water. Back then, nobody felt that it was necessary, but I think we're now physically getting to that point to where we can't continue to gamble with making operational changes at the plant, because eventually those will stop working. We will be limited to what we can do. But I told the group that I wasn't going to do anything until I came to council and had this discussion about what the implications of the pump station are. Basically, we're looking at a $6 million project. Northern Water already has the land bought, so the location is known where it'll be tied into the system. They've done enough preliminary engineering to know that it's about a $6 million project, but there still needs to be more done for final design. These types of pumps they don't require a lot of maintenance if they're not being used, so it's the type of thing that if we build it and we don't need a lot of capacity right away, they just idle down, they don't get used, and then they're just there for when the time is, called upon. The part that makes it kind of scary from the planning standpoint, and this is the conversations I've had with Jeff and I've had with Al out at the plant, is that this is 3 years away from even having these things online if we decide to begin this process this month. And if we keep growing and seeing the growth that we've had on our system, 3 years is still a long ways away. And we can continue to make those operational changes, but I think it's time that we go ahead and tell the rest of the group that Fort Morgan feels that it's necessary to go ahead and move forward with this. I mean, I'm the last person to want to burden the water fund with any more, financial obligation, but I think at this point, if we want to continue to be able to grow and continue to sustain the growth that we're seeing in our system, we've got to go ahead and push the planning portion of this forward and then the construction portion of this. And so what I'm here tonight is just wanting direction from council to make sure that, is this something that you guys are okay and on board with? And is it okay for me to go back to this smaller participant group and tell them that the city of Fort Morgan is on board with moving this forward, or are we not? Are we still wanting to be cautious and look at, other operational changes at the facility?
I have a couple of either comments or questions for you. I know this pump station's been in the pipeline since its
Day one.
inception.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, from Carter Lake to the Southern Water Supply Pipeline turnout, we have 17.2 or 12, we had that 9.5 CFS
Is
coming
what we
through
get at
Fort
the end.
Lupton has kind of always been a bottleneck for us. We
Yep.
have the additional capacity in that pipeline.
Yeah, let me see if I got that number with everything that Carl gave me.
It's 12.7 or 17.2, something to that.
Yeah, I'm not for sure what the capacity restriction is. We are restricted to the 9.5.
5 because of a
passed.
bottleneck.
Yeah. And
Now, you had mentioned we utilized all of our capacity, and at some point, did we utilize what we share with Quality Water?
yeah, July last year, we had 7 days that it took all of our capacity and part of or all of Quality Water's capacity to make it through those 7 days.
Do we still have that capacity agreement with Fort Lupton? I
Yes.
think we have one CFS or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have that bottleneck at Fort Lupton that we're renting their one CFS to get us through that bottleneck. And it's probably the cheapest agreement we've ever signed as a city. I think it's $1,000 a year.
Did that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron.
Okay. Well, this has been one that's been on the radar since we've got CBT water. And all the participants on the Southern Water Supply Pipeline have known that we're going to be the trigger puller. And at 3 years, I know it's a cost that we really have a hard time pulling, but it is a necessity.
And it's kind of, we always go back to economic development, and without doing this and without starting down this road, we kind of are putting ourselves in a position that we can't proceed forward and get
Yeah.
a whole lot bigger, or we risk the potential
And
of not being
it makes
able.
it difficult for us to, continue to be in like the NIST project and know that we've got another 3,600 acre feet of water that we can take delivery of, but no, the delivery straw is not even close to being big enough to get it to us. And so this is just kind of that intermediate piece that we need to make sure that we can continue to grow with our CBT, but then also be able to take that NISP water when it gets done and built. So, and just as a comparison, if we were going to build like additional raw water storage or even treated water storage, we would be looking at, I think the last time we had water tank estimates done, it was like $5 to $7 million to build new water tanks and all that. And so, and our participation in this pump project is only going to be about $2.3 million. So it's still the cheaper alternative than to building some type of additional storage out at the facility.
And we're additionally going to need this when the NIST projects get going, because we have storage in those reservoirs. And so, to get that water here, we'll need this pumping station.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have a question?
Yeah. Why is it going to take until 2020, where you said they've already got the engineering done, they've been planning it since the beginning and everything like that? What is it that creates the 3-year delay then?
That's a very good question. I just know their final design process that they go through, and then their contracting. With Northern being the agency that they are, sometimes they've got to jump through more hoops than we do, because a lot of this project is tied to federal obligations, and there's other things that always seem to slow down the process with them. But that was their schedule that they passed upon us in that last meeting, that it would be 2020 before we would see any water if we moved forward with it this summer. So,
And seeing what we've gone through with
NISP and that whole process, I mean, I can understand how it'd be delayed, but where you said that it was something that kind of been
Where they have
planned
the
and
land.
diagrammed and was part of it
Yep.
from the very beginning, I just didn't understand what was
Yep.
going to be the holdup.
I think the feds are going to make them go in and look for that black-footed frog.
Probably.
The
'Cause he's hiding in
endangered
that
species
pipeline.
stuff, that orchid, and so I think they'll make them jump through that hoop again, so.
So-
But that's just my assumption.
So basically, Brent, what this does is this allows, I mean, it doesn't make the straw, as you, the analogy used, any larger. It just forces the water through instead of gravity forcing it
Yes.
through, so we get it quicker.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we go from our capacity being 9.5 CFS, it jumps up to 15.5. So that's a substantial increase.
And that's after Fort Lupton?
Yes.
So it still is the 9.5, correct, coming out of Fort Lupton, but then we just kind of
Yeah,
boost it.
yes.
So, okay.
So I got a couple of queries. First of all, can you walk me, or someone walk me through the money? Where would this money come from? Is this, this seems like it would be unbudgeted, so reserves or?
At this point, it is unbudgeted. The green light today basically gives us the green light to Northern and the group. Northern will come back with a proposed budget on what that's going to cost, and then we'll come back to council and say, here's what our share is going to cost, these are the payments, and this is how we propose to pay it. We do have money in the reserve fund for the water. Currently, we're evaluating those levels as we get closer to NISP and what we need to do, but primarily the payment for the improvements on the water system are paid through, there's two ways you can do it. We can pay it through the cash reserves that are currently in the water fund, or we can go out and bond it and take on debt to pay for it and then just make payments over a period of time. We'll take into consideration what makes more sense given our obligations with NISP, on whether we just pay cash for this, or does it make more sense to have that cash on hand for the bond obligations with NISP and bond this project as well. But we'll definitely bring that back when we get the budget. So right now, we're not asking to pay the money. We have a preliminary number of $2.3 million, but they'll finalize the numbers and get it back to us and probably be in the next year's budget for you to review before we make those payments.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate spending any money in 2017 on this, because I think just by the time they go through all the hoops and they're just going out to, because I'm sure they'll go out to a full bid process on the final engineering and all that. And so by the time we get into that process and moving forward with that, we probably won't see a bill until 2018. And so hopefully by then, we'll have a number in our budget to handle the preliminary stuff, and then the construction won't occur till 2019. And then we'll have that discussion with you at that time, if that's something like Jeff says, we're going to pay out of reserves, or if we're going to figure out some other mechanism to fund it through, so.
Okay, it's just made me a little bit nervous. I like having the reserves there for emergencies and necessary things, and we've had some big projects that we've come up with money for, you know, the fiber and the Center Point Plaza.
Yeah.
And I know there's some other things that we want to do too, so.
Well, and we do have to keep in mind that this is just strictly a water enterprise request. And so right now, when you look at where we've been with the water fund, especially over the last 5 years, we have been building healthy cash reserves in anticipation of the NISP project. And so we don't have really, there hasn't been any other planned out investments of the cash that's in that account, except for NISP, but we know NISP is going to be a large obligation, and so this is one of those that we're just going to have to fit in there, and this will be brought up with we're in the middle of our rate study on the water enterprise right now, and this will be brought up with our consultant as we move forward, and he will then have recommendations potentially on what we might want to do with this smaller project compared to NISP.
And it's important to note that water fund projects can only be paid with a water fund, and 9.9% payment out of the general fund. We can't take money from the electric fund unless it's we borrow money from the electric fund to the other fund. There's not a legal mechanism other than a loan from one enterprise to another enterprise. So we would be focused on the reserves in the water fund and not any other reserves in doing this. So.
Okay, thank you.
And just for your guys' information, Kent Flagler has already taken this to the Morgan County Quality Water Board, and they're in full support of going ahead and moving forward with the project now also.
Okay.
So you're just basically asking if we're in favor of moving forward, and so you can
So I can
know the
take-
other, or let the other
Yeah, I can let the other
participants,
group, participants know that,
which is Fort Lupton, Hudson, Quality
Tri-State.
Water, and us.
and Tri-State.
Oh, and Tri-State's in
Yep.
there now. Sure. Yeah.
How, if all things go according to plan, NISP is happening, we build this pump stuff, Fort Morgan is growing like we hope that it will.
Yeah.
And, you know, we bring in new businesses and everything. How long will this meet our needs? Are we looking at, I mean, when do we have to?
Yeah. That'll have to be additional analysis to look at what the actual capacity we get out of that and how much further down the road that gets us based upon our current growth trends. And so, but honestly, that is not a calculation that's been done. Up till this point, I've been working with the last calculation saying that we could get us up to, basically 18 CFS total out of the pipeline, which is, not double, but pretty darn close to double of what we get right now.
So our next big project would probably be the additional raw water reservoir that we purchased that land for.
Yeah, we would probably be getting into a situation there that, first of all, the next major trigger is probably going to be, can we treat water fast enough? Because our plant then has capacity issues. And then the issue then becomes, okay, if we can store it as raw water and the plant can still treat it, then how large of a raw water vessel do we need out there? And so there's going to be a bunch of different components that'll come into play with the next phase. My guess is, just my guess at this point, our plant is going to constrain us next. We will not be able to clean the water fast enough to send it into town. But that plant was designed that a second train could be built, that's the production side of it, be built, and the building expanded and everything done, so we're not building a completely brand-new facility from scratch. And so there was some pre-thought into the current design of that facility out there.
And I really appreciate that question, because that's really what council should be looking at, is the long-term planning issues with how are we going to make sure that we do have these things out on the horizon and looking at them. And it will be a step-by-step process, because capacity comes in a lot of different forms. You can have capacity in your raw water, capacity in your conveyance, capacity in your finished water vessels. And so there's a lot of different things we look at, and we try and find the most cost-effective way to increase that capacity. And in this case, as Brent pointed out, this pump station seems to be the less expensive way to improve the capacity that we're going to need down the road, and the quickest way to get it. And then we'll go to the next, choke point in the system and make that wider as we go along. But these are long-term planning things. I think that's a great question to keep in mind. What is the next step, and what are we going to do next after we get all the water in NISP? So.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were talking about potential big growth along the Front Range and millions of more people coming in, and they're going to need water, and they're going to try and get it from wherever they can, and we need to protect ours.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So we just need a motion, or?
Yeah, a motion directing staff to move forward with, start the rock rolling down the hill.
I guess first off, is everybody okay with moving forward with this for future developments or future needs?
Yes.
If so, I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I would offer a motion that the pump station project for the pipeline supply for CBT water be moved forward.
Second? Me? Oh,
Lisa.
Sorry, I'm normally not that quiet.
No, she isn't.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. I will pass that along. We have a meeting in, I think, 3 weeks, so.
Okay. Next, we have a presentation and possible action on an extension of an existing consulting agreement with Manweiler Associates for the Fiber to the Home project. Mr. Nation.
Yeah, I needed to bring this in as we begin construction. All of you may not notice, but I notice it more and more every day. The contractor's been calling in locates for the underground utilities where they're going to be running the fiber, and so they'll begin potholing operations and looking at boring yet this week, potentially. Kind of an oversight on my part, I should have brought this in a month or so ago when I was working with Manweiler Telecom. We had a contract that in place with them to do design and a bunch of other miscellaneous aspects of the original part of the fiber project. When we did those proposals, we asked all the consultants that gave us, responses to that RFP to let us know what their basically kind of construction oversight, rates were. Manweilers were just in line with everybody else's, and so we knew that we would probably be able to utilize them. And so at this point, Manweiler has given me an extension that would cover all of the engineering and construction oversight services that we need as we move through all of the work this summer with them. And so in your memo, you see he broke it out into actual construction management, consulting on the private partnership portion of this, and then also the creation of the as-built once we get all the data together from once everything's in the ground. And that's extensive work with all of the crossings that we do and everything. It's very important to have good as-built from this project. And so I'm just looking to get an extension to Manweiler's contract so we can go ahead and use his services to complete this portion of the work this year. So be happy to answer any questions.
We're still well under budget on materials and construction.
Absolutely.
And that
Yep.
by a long shot.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're very pleased with the work that they've done up to this point.
Yes,
correct?
and that first joint build phase, we used Manweiler to do the construction supervision and everything, even though Viera was carrying the contract. And the response I got back from Viera was they were very satisfied, very happy with the work that their construction people were doing while they were here, so.
Great.
Questions of Brent? If there are none, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution approving the mayor to sign a contract extension with Manweiler Telecom Consulting in an amount not to exceed $83,000.
Second?
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. And just on a fiber note, we will be getting we're submitting an RFI for that private party responses and everything, and we'll get that out this week. And so we'll be moving that forward, and then hopefully in a month or so, be able to bring back the responses that we get on that to council. So that is moving forward. It ended up being a little more of a complicated document, so we've had other sets of eyes look at it and everything before we got ready to publish it. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have public comment and audience participation for any items not on the agenda. Is there anybody here who wishes to address council? About the young man in the Boy Scout uniform.
I'm pretty sure his hand was raised.
You're good.
I'm good. That's okay. We have staff that doesn't even want to come up, so.
Next, we have reports by officials and staff.
Does anybody have anything particular for council? We've got, we're gearing up for construction season, and things are moving forward. One report is, you probably saw that the sales tax that the state was looking at putting out as an initiative failed to get passed in the General Assembly. They're still considering that expecting there might be a citizenry group that comes and asks for that initiative. But at this point, given the fact that there are It doesn't look like there will be a competing sales tax. We're formulating a plan and bringing it back to council on how to address moving forward with the sales tax for streets and roads improvements here in the city of Fort Morgan. Other than that, we're getting ready to really dive into a lot of the analysis for the budget. Next meeting, we'll be talking about revenues, which is always fun. Where does our money come from? How much are we going to get, and how much are we going to be working from? So we'll start the revenue assumptions in the budget for next meeting. And for those of you who are new on council, we start there, and then that's what we budget to is our assumptions of revenue. And we're very conservative with those numbers, which keeps us in the black. So other than that, hope that people are getting out, enjoying the good weather when it's here. And when it's not, I hope they're going to the library and the museum and all the indoor facilities that we have to provide people with a great quality of life here in the center of the universe, Fort Morgan. And appreciate council support. And if you have any questions, now's the time.
The center point of the universe.
Center point of the universe, yes.
I got you, Josh.
I would like to just say one thing. Last Thursday, some of the council attended the Crystal Apple Awards, and we have 2 distinguished recipients of that award on council. And I'd just like to say congratulations to Dan Marler and Allison Howe for your award at that. It was a good representation of community and council. Congrats to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bids, meetings, and announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a large number of bids right now. We're accepting sealed bids for the sale of surplus city property consisting of 3 seized vehicles until 3 o'clock tomorrow, May 3rd. Also sealed bids for 2017 concession operations until 4 p.m. on May 3rd. Sealed bids for the turf runway 826 seating project until 4 p.m. on May 9th. Sealed bids for a 4-wheel drive 1-ton SRW pickup until 3:45 p.m. on May 11th. Sealed bids for a 4-wheel drive 3/4-ton pickup until 3:45 p.m. on May 11th. Sealed proposals for chlorine scrubber replacement until 3 p.m. on May 24th. Proposals for engineering and surveying services for plating and road design for the Center Point Plaza until 4 p.m. on May 25th. Proposals for a trails master plan until 4 p.m. on May 25th. Proposals for tennis court design build until 4 p.m. on May 25th. And proposals for a skate park design build until 4 p.m. on May 25th. Under meetings, the Planning Commission will meet on May 8th at 4:30 p.m. at City Hall. The Airport Advisory Board, I believe that one has been canceled. The Historic Preservation Board meeting will be on May 11th at 4 p.m. at City Hall. The Library Advisory Board is scheduled to meet May 15th at 4:30 p.m. in the Museum Community Room. The Senior Center Advisory Board is scheduled to meet May 16th at 1:30 p.m. in the Senior Center, and the next City Council regular meeting will be May 16th at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. Just a couple of quick announcements. A bike rodeo and safety events for children of all ages, sponsored by the Police Department and One Morgan County, will be this Saturday, May 6th at Pioneer Elementary School at 11:30 a.m. And the May dates for the Coffee with the Cop program have been set. They will be Monday, May 8th at noon at Cafe Lotus, hosted by Sergeant Jim Parks, and Wednesday, May 24th at 9 a.m. at Zazie Cafe, excuse me, hosted by Commander Lauren Sharp.
No other business before the council. This meeting's adjourned.
Another great meeting. Yep.
Thank you.